Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the Mike Francesa podcast, part of the Bet Rivers Network. And we come to you across a frigid nation, no matter where you are. I don't care what part of the country you're in. It's cold right now and will be for the next 4 or 5 days. So just get through this part of the winter the best you can as we get ready for a Super Bowl. And there's a lot going on. Including the outrage everywhere, feigned and real, over the fact that Belichick did not get into the Hall of Fame. I'll get to that in a second. More news on coaching, including one move that will impact the Giants. But first, let me tell you that coming soon to the Mike Francesa newsletter is a new contest where you can win a personalized message from me or other prizes. If you haven't signed up to the newsletter, go to MikeFrancesAPodcast.com and do so. It's free, and it'll be delivered to your inbox, and you get a chance to get some goodies too. So check that out. Before I get to any of that, though, I have to address the Jets. We know that Jon Gruden has seen his life take some twists and turns that I'm sure he couldn't have calculated, nor would he have wanted to calculate in recent years. I'm sure it hasn't all gone as smoothly as he would have loved to, but he had to take a second. And as he relayed the information that he had been offered an assistance position with the Jets, that life has come to a place where he never could have expected. Obviously, he turned it down, but it just shows you where the Jets are. Even more so than it does where John is. Eventually John might get out of this purgatory that he's in. I think there's a chance he will. I guess there's also a chance he won't. I'm sure he has many good coaching days left in him. It can turn around. I can tell you that he can look no further than Rick Pitino, who, when I was still at the Fan, came in the studio and told me, "I will never coach again." I said, "Nonsense. You're a coach. Coach is coach." That's what I've learned through the years. Coach is coach. And he has since come back and look at the success and look at the existence he has now as he has made himself the Prince of Jamaica Estates in these last couple of years. So there is always another day, and I'm sure there will be for Gruden, but I don't know what the future holds for the Jets. I mean, listen, this is not to attack Aaron Glenn. I know I have at times this year. I have been mystified by some of their moves. I have been horrified by some of their ineptitude. And now to see after the season this incredible occurrence with the coaching staff. Now, I'm not saying he had a good coaching staff, and I'm not saying he had to make changes on his coaching staff. As I've told you, there's only one coach that I know on that staff that was worth his weight, and that was the special teams coach who's still there, who's a young man who learned under Westhoff and had a great year last year. I'm not sure about the offensive line coach. I'll leave myself, I need to see more from him. I saw some good things and some things I didn't love. But the special teams coach did a great job, Chris Banjo, last year. He's still there. But to have the craziness that has gone on and still, as an organization, have faith in this head coach who told you last year that get ready, buckle up for this ride. We're not going to be the same old Jets. We're building a culture. You'll be proud of us. First of all, he did not inherit a rebuilding job. He created a rebuilding job. That was not a rebuilding job that he was walking into if he made the right decisions from the start, and he didn't. From the moment and I'm not saying he had to bring Aaron Rodgers back, but to treat him the way he did and make a mess out of the quarterback situation as he did. The Jets last year were so non-competitive at times. It's amazing they won any games. It really is. I mean, to think that the Falcons have to sit there tied for the division lead and didn't make the playoffs because they blew a lead to the Jets is hard to fathom and maybe one of the biggest reasons why the coach got fired. I mean, how can anybody look at the mess that we are looking at right now with the Jets and have a bit of confidence in them? Their season ended mercifully with all the teams, like all the teams that didn't make the playoffs. That's a month ago. Since then, all they have done is lose coaches and fire coaches. They now have no offensive coordinator. They have no defensive coordinator. They actually have put themselves back in a position where they have to abide by the Rooney Rule. It is bizarre what has gone on. You had heard flirtations. Forget Gruden. I didn't hear that until after the fact, and I didn't take it seriously. But you've heard flirtations with good coordinators. I mean, Wink would have come in, but I would have thought, hey, he's running the team. But Aaron Glenn informed him that he was going to call the defensive signals, which he promised he would never do when he became head coach, because he said a head coach shouldn't be doing that. But now he's going to do it in year 2. He has no coordinators. He has no staff except for an offensive line coach and a special teams coach, who I told you I think is very highly of. I don't think there's anybody left at the staff. There might be one. If he winds up, after he interviews the people he has to interview to abide by the Rooney Rule, if he hires Frank Reich, I think he hires someone who is highly capable of doing the job. I think that would be a step in the right direction, even though he has no quarterback. This year looks like it could be worse than last year. I don't see any way that Aaron Glenn sees a third year. Now, it's very hard to calculate some of the, the inner thinking of the Jets, whether it's Woody or anybody in his quote unquote hierarchy. But this is a mess of such enormous proportions now that they're virtually here as we approach February in a non-competitive state. You can't tell me that any of this is a plan. There's no way any of this is a plan. He didn't want to get rid of his offense coordinator, but he wanted to take away his ability to call the plays and still call him the offensive coordinator. And the kid didn't want a part of it, which I understand. He's trying to build a career. I wouldn't want to be part of that staff right now either if I could get out of it. It's a complete mess. And it has gotten much worse since the end of a year that was the most embarrassing December that any NFL team has ever had. And they didn't even wind up with the top pick, even in all that ineptitude. So the Gruden part of it is just another crazy story in what has become just a complete embarrassment. Really, I think it's hard to understand how the Jets can even look anybody in the eye and talk about plan, or talk about process, or talk about anything else. Despite what they have in draft picks, despite what they can do personnel-wise, who knows who can do what there? When you have a coach who's done the things that this coach has done, and I don't ever remember seeing a guy have a terrible first year. Someone brought up Hugh Jackson as the one that you're going to compare to what's happening with Aaron Glenn. And remember, Hugh Jackson, I think after going 1-15 the first year, went 0-16 the second year. It's that bad. And you don't even shake your head anymore. You just look at it and say, are you serious? And from an ownership standpoint, there's nothing to say. Why yell and scream? It's not even worth it. They are a complete disaster and an utter embarrassment. Now, just this morning, Todd Monken becomes the head coach of Cleveland. Good for him. Obviously, it means a change that the Giants probably did not anticipate, but one I'm sure they are prepared for. There are plenty of qualified people out there, and people who can bring different style to a quarterback and to an offense that has some very, very interesting parts, led by a quarterback who can seriously play. So anyone would love to be Harbaugh's, because Harbaugh, remember, is not an offensive coach; he's a special teams coach. He will allow the offensive and defensive coordinators latitude. He will allow them to do their jobs. It's a good place to operate under a head coach who has a lot of power and knows how to deal with the players and build the culture. And that is a very good situation to have a coordinator work under, because the players are going to be in line. They're going to be attentive. They're going to be efficient and productive, and you're going to be in charge. So that's a very, very good situation. Now to the Belichick thing. Listen, the outrage, the crazy notions, oh, pick at the Hall of Fame, don't do this, don't do that. Hey, it's not that big a deal. If I ask you to go research what great baseball players didn't get into the Hall of Fame their first go round, go take a look at the list. For a variety of reasons, go take a look at the list. First of all, you don't even know who's on the list. Secondly, if you look at the names on the list, you'll say, how is this humanly possible that this guy and this guy and this guy and this guy didn't get in on the first ballot? Should he have gotten in on the first ballot? Yes. Did Bill Polian use his influence and the anger he's harbored all these years to cause this to happen? I don't know, and I don't care. Belichick might be annoyed. He'll be annoyed for a day. The real losers are the Hall of Fame, the voters, the institution, and the process, because it just shows you how ridiculous the whole thing is. When a guy who has his credentials, now, if you or somebody with power wants to, punish him, punish Belichick for his wrongs, for the things that you either allege or believe that he did. And we know he wasn't a choir boy, okay? He had to be punished for those things in real time. The commissioner blew it. Actually, he got hoodwinked if you go back. I don't want to spend a lot of time on the story, but the bottom line is the commissioner thought one thing was going to happen and Belichick was going to apologize, and he never did. And the commissioner was crazy and irate and everything, because early on, Kraft kept Belichick from getting suspended. Everyone knows that story. But the bottom line is it's old hat. And it doesn't play into the fact that this guy won 2 Super Bowls as a coordinator and 6 as a head coach. The man has spent his life in the Super Bowl. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. You don't have a Hall of Fame. It doesn't make him look bad. It makes him a sympathetic character. It makes the Hall of Fame in football look bad. But for those who scream about it, this is a story that fades away very quickly. Before you know it, he's in next year, and nobody cares that he didn't get in the first year. He cares because people want to get in the Hall of Fame. They always do, more than they let on. And when they've waited years to get in, they really, really want to get in, because the hurrahs have stopped. The awards have stopped. All the stuff you got very used to year in and year out as a great player or a great coach has stopped. And now this is the final hurrah, one that's for history. And everybody wants it. Everyone in their profession wants to get into the Hall of Fame. It means a lot. If you've been fortunate enough to do it, you understand that. But it is something that will fade away, and all the outrage will fade away, and it will be yesterday's news before real long. The Hall of Fame and its voters are going to take a hit. Bill Polian is going to take a hit. Okay? But the bottom line is You know he's going to get in next year. So what's the big deal? In the long run, it's not. And all I tell you is to do today is go check the list of baseball greats who didn't get in on the first ballot, and you will be stunned at who's on the list. And you don't even realize they're there because it doesn't matter because they're in the hall and they belong there. And he belongs there. And this hurts the institution and the voters far more than it hurts Belichick by any stretch. So it doesn't work, it backfires anyway. Sean Payton, who cannot get over what happened in his game, is making changes on his staff, including getting rid of Joe Lombardi. Hey, Sean has done a great job there. It's unfortunate that he lost his quarterback. And in the midst of a really, really hard game to manage with that quarterback against that team in that weather, he messed up. He should have taken a field goal and gone up 10-0. That doesn't mean that Stidham wouldn't turn the ball over anyway. It doesn't mean that New England would automatically lose, but it would have been a lot harder. And maybe with a 10-0 lead, he takes a different judgment on that play and takes the sack. They punt the ball away and they don't score in the first half. It was a tough game. And you had two very talented coaches in Peyton and McVay who did not have good days in losing these conference championship games. They did not. They did not make good decisions. And in this world of analytics now, coaches have to go back, especially in big games, and understand the importance of 3 points in these games that has been left for dead, just cold, time after time after time. I mean, I don't know how many times I could count in the playoffs this year where it was a bad decision. At least 5 or 6, maybe more, including a couple on Sunday again. And it does make a difference. It makes a big difference. And to have a very, very questionable quarterback with little experience against a good defense and on a tough field that was getting tougher by the minute and not go up 2 scores was a colossal mistake. Colossal. And one that'll follow him until he takes Denver to a Super Bowl, which I think he would have done with Knicks if he had had him this year. I don't think there's any question. McCarthy to the Steelers, he says he'd be interested in Aaron Rodgers again, and we'll see how that plays out. Brady gets the Bills job, and I'm telling you, talking to a couple of Bills fans, I cannot believe how angry Buffalo is at the owner and management. I mean, they are incensed, and they have turned Sean McDermott, who I think is a solid coach. I never thought he was a great coach. I never thought he was a real good big game coach. But he won a lot. And clearly he's a solid coach. I mean, look at his record. I understand he had a great quarterback, but look at his record. He didn't win the big game, but a lot of guys don't win the big game. But you said the coaching staff after the game said the coaching staff had taken this team as far as it could. That was your judgment as owner. And then you hire someone off the staff and you keep the front office. I mean, it's very strange, and it's being treated very strangely and very angrily in Buffalo. Now, obviously, Josh Allen was happy. They would not have done anything that would have set him, and he has someone that he's very comfortable with who's 36 years old and is now the head coach. So there are still a couple of slots to fill. Arizona, maybe LaFleur there. Raiders, I'm not sure who they're hiring. They're still out there too. Now that Monken gets a chance to be the head coach in Cleveland, we'll see how the others fall in the next couple of days. And then that process has been over. And then you look at how many coordinators, if you're someone who follows like defensive and offensive coordinators, you go that deep into the football, look at how many changes there have been this year. And those changes are impactful because they change the way teams play and the way they cut rosters and the way rosters are cut and the formulation of how teams are going to attack a season. And there's an incredible amount of change this year. There really is. Really an enormous amount of change. One other thing about the Super Bowl. We went up towards the championship game dealing with Sam's oblique, which clearly wasn't an issue because he had a terrific game against the Rams, throwing for as many yards as he did, not turning the ball over, hitting 7 different receivers. I mean, I thought Sam had a great game. And clearly the oblique was not an issue, whether they shot it up or whatever they did. Well, whatever they did, they got away with it very well. There is a rumor that the Pats have been dispelling, and I think it plays into the fact that the offense has had so much struggles in the last 3 weeks. Now, they've played good defenses, and last week they played a really good defense in inclement conditions. Now, May used his legs, and that was how he won, no question. Let's be honest, they made 1 play in the passing game, and that was the flea flicker. That was it. There are rumors out there that May's got a bad throwing shoulder. They've been dispelling it for a couple of days, but I think this will follow them to the Super Bowl. Who knows? Who knows? The bottom line is he's going to play, which and we'll see how he does. In the last 3 games in the playoffs, he has been sacked 15 times. 15 times. The difference in the Denver game was he didn't turn the ball over. And his running killed Denver, and I thought Denver made a colossal mistake in not thinking he was an enormous threat to run the ball on that 3rd down. They were not going to pass the ball under any circumstances. They were going to run the ball. If I remember right, it was 3rd and 6. They were going to run the ball. They were going to work on that as far as they were not putting the ball in the air under those conditions, and they wanted to work on Denver. Also, bottom line is, on that kind of field, you can always make somebody miss. Now, I don't know why it was such a foregone conclusion to the Denver defense that they were just going to hand the ball off. His running was a huge factor, and there's no way he should have been able to get to the 1st down marker, not in a million years, because there was not a chance in the world that ball was going up in the air. I thought that was, for a defense that had a terrific year, that was a colossal blunder. And, we heard it called a daring play call. I don't really think it was a daring play call. I thought it was a very conservative play call in that he was going to hold on to the ball. If somebody came to tackle him, he was going to sit down and let him punt the ball. He was going to hold the ball with 2 hands and make sure nobody got it until he saw the 1st down marker and was able to get to it. And if he wasn't and somebody was there, he was just going to go down and they were going to punt the football because they didn't think Denver could move the ball, and they were probably right. And kicking the ball was a problem. And I also thought the telecast did not make a big enough deal out of the fact that Denver's field goal attempt was blocked. not blocked, tipped. It got airborne and it got far enough, but it was tipped off course. That was an enormous, because I think that kick is good otherwise. I've watched it a bunch of times. I think it was good, except the fact that it got tipped. And that tip should have been a far bigger play because it was an enormous play in the game. These in those kind of games come down to that. And I've seen some commentary where people have said, "Oh, we should not have that kind of conditions to decide who goes to the Super Bowl." Nonsense. That's football. Football's played in the elements. There's no problem with playing football in the elements. That's been going on forever. It's part of what football's about. Go back to the Ice Bowl. Go back to Chuck Messine and the play he makes. Go back to the game in Cincinnati where it was so cold and the Chargers, who were so lethal offensively, couldn't even run their offense that day as they went to the Super Bowl. Or the day I spent in '85 when the Giants came in on that incredibly cold day into Chicago when they got beat 20-0 and really played well that day. I mean, they played them except for a couple of plays, including the Landetta play. I mean, they played them really toe-to-toe. And you've heard so many times that their run to winning it the next year in Pasadena started that day. And it really did. Just like the year before, I was in San Francisco. And Steve Fuller and the Bears got beat and shut out by the Niners. And that's where the Bears run really started. You know, it's just a lot of times it's the next year, and that was the case a lot of times. You know, the Bears lose to the Niners, then the Giants lose to the Bears, and then the Redskins lose to the Giants, and then the Redskins are in the year after, and year after year after the teams that lose are back in it and winning it. And that happened year after year in the NFC in those years. The NFC teams went and they won. And a lot of them did with dominant performances. But I was in Chicago that day, and it was incredibly cold and windy. I mean, it was like something like 45 below zero, or maybe even worse. It was with the wind chill, something crazy. But that's football. I don't want to see that end. If you play in a stadium that's outside, more power to you. If you play in one of these, domes, or you have the retractable roof, you have to close it on the day like that. Hey, it's the way life is. Then you're going to get your shootouts. But having those kind of games, I think, is still a big part of football. And you win that way, or you win the other way. You win 35-32, or you win 10-7. That's the way it goes. We are days away from the NBA trade deadline, 2-5. And while getting blockbusters done is very difficult, and a lot of the rumors you hear don't pan out because of injuries or contracts or getting that third team. If you're a Knicks fan, you're very interested right now because there is a good chance they are going to make a move, if not the move. And I think they are very busy, and I think they are very active. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. But I think if you're asking, do they want to do it? I think the answer is yes. Will they get it done? Like I said, it's never easy in the NBA. So there's always a chance it doesn't. But I'd say it's better than 50-50 that the Knicks make what is at least a important trade, if not the trade. So we'll see how that unfolds. The Super Bowl keeps going back between 4.5 and 5 points. If you're interested in the over-under, which I never am, is 46.5, which in a good field in this game is probably lowest scoring because I think the Seattle defense is going to cause a lot of problems. Yeah, I think the thing that has happened is the New England offensive line has not held up. And if it doesn't hold up in this game, they're in big, big trouble. He has been under a lot of pressure in the playoffs. Now, he's played good defenses. He played the Chargers. He played Houston, which was the best, and he played Denver, which led the league in sacks and had 5 last week. He's been under a lot of pressure throughout the playoffs. And it has showed. And I think that could be the case again in this game. While Seattle, has some very versatile weapons and is a very good team, soup to nuts. They've built themselves a very good team without a lot of weaknesses. And for Sam Darnold, he is one step away from something that they can never, ever take away from him. He's on his way to a good career now. That's pretty much solidified. But he's one more really good day away from something nobody can ever touch or debate. He will be a championship quarterback. And considering what he did last year, and then changing teams and doing what he's done this year, it shows the quality was always there. And he gets the last laugh for a guy who is a really good kid and a good football player. And as I saw Rex Ryan say the other day, and I completely agree with, a guy who's really hard to root against. There are guys that it's easy to root against. Sam Darnold's not one of those guys. He's really not. He's one of those guys that he's easy to root for. And he's paid his dues, put it that way. And now he's one step away. So is May at a very young age, but he's one step away. We'll see you later.